Greetings, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, we want to welcome you to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews programmed by Mindalia TV. Today, Angel Ribo, CEO, coach, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and host for Mindalia TV, is conducting an interview to Diogo Esteves. Diogo is going to be talking us about the amazing journey of a Kingsman. Before starting, we want to remind you that if you want to help the other people through Mindalia TV, there's a couple of simple things you can do just by subscribing to our channel, liking our video, or just leaving us a positive comment down below. You help a lot of people around the globe to have access to the information we share daily in our channel. Also, while we are live streaming, if you want to actively participate in this interview, we have the active chat. It is on the side of your screen. You can enter your questions there and it'll be kindly answered by our guest today. Just please remember the format, the word question in caps, then the place where you're seeing us from, and the actual question you want answered. Having said all this, without further ado, I'm going to be leaving you with Angel. Angel?
Thank you, Mirna. Thank you for the introduction. It's a real pleasure today to have Diogo Esteves with us. Hi, Diogo. How are you?
Wonderful. Yourself?
Very well. Very well. Thank you. So let's start our conversation. We've known Diogo for a while already, and Diogo is a strong man, and he has these amazing stories. So I would like to start. Really, I would like to share with you a little bit of your personal story with our audience, please.
Sure. So I'm originally from Brazil. I've been in the US for the last about 15 years or so, and I've lived in 6 different states. So I've traveled quite a bit. And these last couple of years have been very interesting. We've had a lot of interesting lessons throughout our lives that we wanted to share with others. I'm married. I've been married for about 15 years as well. And I have 2 amazing kids, Matthew, who's 10 years old, and Luca, who's almost 4. So we've just released a book, obviously, which is going to be one of the main subjects today. But I've been working in the financial services industry for the last 8 years. So there's quite a bit of an experience that I have with when it comes to numbers and financial strategies and things like that. And we're just very excited to be here with you guys today to be able to share a little bit more of that story.
Excellent. What do you think makes your story unique, Diogo?
Well, I believe that everybody's story is very unique. And I think that everything that we go through life, we end up being able to extract very valuable lessons that I believe need to be shared with others. When I first thought about writing this book, first of all, I've never actually had an intention of becoming a writer or really, had the audacity of just going out there and writing about anything. But like I said, because of everything that we went through, especially in these last couple of years, I wanted to kind of leave something to my kids that would help them throughout their lives and that would give them that edge that most people are looking for. And I always say that a good way to learn is through your own experiences, and a great way to learn is through someone else's experiences. So I figured that if I were able to pass the experiences that I've been able to acquire along the years over to my kids so they wouldn't make the same mistakes that I made, I believe that would have caused a major impact in their lives. And that's one of the main reasons why I believe that my story is very unique, but also understanding that each and every one of us has a unique story that needs to be passed on because of the lessons that we learned along the way.
Let's talk about those lessons. Would you mind sharing those lessons with us?
Yeah, well, some of the lessons that I shared throughout the book. In the book, just to give it a little bit of background, the book is called The Journey of a Kingsman and the 12 Quests to Become the One You Were Created to Be. I believe that each and every one of us were uniquely created by a higher being for a very specific reason, so we could accomplish a specific mission on this earth, right? I believe that we were all created for relationships, and I always say that we're created for vertical relationships, us and God, and we're also created for horizontal relationships because we were, I believe, created to help each other out in one aspect of life. That's the reason why each and every one of us have been given different gifts and talents so we could help others out. And so throughout my life, most of the challenges that I've had have been because I had no idea who I was. So when I reached the age of 29, between 29 and 30, I had a very a very, very scary identity crisis. Almost, I had no idea who I was. And it wasn't because I wasn't accomplishing anything with my life. It wasn't because I hadn't amount to anything. It was actually the opposite. For a 29-year-old, kid, you could put it that way, because a lot of people have said that I had accomplished quite a bit. And, I had built a very successful business, a multi-million-dollar business by the age I was 29. I had franchised that business, opened 15 offices in 2 different countries within a 2-year period of time since I started it. And I had a beautiful family, been married for a long time, and 2 beautiful kids, and just really had everything that anybody could ever want. Beautiful home, beautiful cars, trips, and all kinds of things. But I got to a point where I had no idea who I was, and that was the biggest challenge. I actually believed that I was what I had, my titles, my businesses, the success, and everything else as well. So that all changed when one day at my house, I got down on my knees and I literally had asked God to take my life because I could no longer live that way. Nothing made sense. There was just no sense of purpose whatsoever. It was just such a void in my heart that I kept trying to fill with things and just I couldn't fill it because it wasn't intended for things. So it was interesting that day, and one of the biggest lessons that I had throughout this process was that, when I finally got down on my knees and asked God to take my life, I asked him either take my life or give me purpose. And I believe that was the biggest lesson that I had throughout this whole time, because each and every one of us are going through life, most of us anyways, deaf, dumb, and blind. We don't know where we're going. We're being led by people that also have no idea where they're going. So when we finally get to a place that we believed was the place that we were looking to reach, we're just like, we're wondering what we're doing there, and it doesn't make any sense. So all of a sudden you look across the way, it's kind of like as if you're climbing the mountain, and you look across the way when you finally reach the peak, and you realize you've just climbed the wrong mountain. Now you have to come all the way down and go back up again. So it's very, very exhausting for you to be doing this throughout your life. So the lessons that I share throughout the book are going to help readers avoid making those mistakes. Now, just like I told my kids before, each and every one of them are going to make their own mistakes. My only goal with this book and this message is to help them avoid the mistakes that I have already made, so they can, get to their goals or find that sense of fulfillment and purpose a lot faster than I did.
How common have you found those mistakes that you've made throughout your life?
How common?
Common to other people, I mean.
I believe they're extremely common, and that's the scary thing, because they're so common that most people are making them and not realizing how bad they are. It's kind of like, if you think about Brazil, for instance, crime is at an all-time high down there. So when people are being kidnapped, all of a sudden it became normal, because so many people are being kidnapped, that their talk, the way they're talking to each other, it's like, how many times have you been kidnapped? Oh, I've been 3 times. Or really, I've been kidnapped 5 times. That's how bad it's got. Well, why do I say this? Because when bad things become common and they become like, it really doesn't matter anymore, I believe that the world starts going to a place that you really don't want it to go. So the mistakes that I've made are common to most people, and I can clearly see that today. But back then, it didn't seem they were that common. When we got back to Orlando, there were a lot of mistakes that I made, especially when it came to my marriage, for instance. And we never realized what was around us. And we always thought that everybody had such a great life, and their marriages were great. Their relationship with their kids were amazing. And when we finally got back to Orlando, we started realizing what was around us. And it's as if we're now all of a sudden a magnet to people, because we experienced that pain before. We're like a magnet to people that are currently experiencing that pain. And now, because we've been so vulnerable and willing to share our struggles, they're now coming to us and saying, okay, this is what I'm going through. What do I do? Now, obviously, we can help them to the extent of the experiences that we have, but we can help them somehow. And like I said, I believe that's the reason we were created to begin with, to help each other throughout life, So the mistakes are very common. They're daily mistakes that we make, but we just don't ever realize how much of an impact the little mistakes that may seem little today are going to have in our life later down the road.
And according to your experience, Diogo, what do you think Mindalia TV, viewers could do in order to start this process, at least to become aware that they have to do it? Because, we have a lot of things going on, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're all leading such busy lives. And I believe that's one of the problems is that we have no more time. We don't even have time to think sometimes. I've been very blessed these last couple of years. And when I keep referring back to the last couple of years, as viewers, if viewers obviously, as they go through the book, they'll understand better what I'm saying. But I've been very blessed because, like I said, I've been in the financial services arena for the last 8 or 9 years. So I've always, and ever since I was 13 years old when I first started working, I've always been very good about saving and investing and managing money. So I've been very blessed in the last couple of years because I've been able to take those years off and literally not have to work, to be able to focus and buy back my time, to be able to focus on what is it that I was supposed to do with my life. Now, remember what I said is when I first got down on my knees and asked God to take my life, my biggest struggle was that I didn't have a sense of purpose. Not because of the stuff, not because of the businesses, not because of the success. It was just simply the void. So I believe that what people don't realize is that because they're working all day and they're running around like crazy, they're sacrificing. I often say this: people sacrifice everything, their health, their relationships, and everything around them, their family, to gain wealth, to pursue things. And when they finally reach the end of their lives, they sacrifice all of their wealth to get everything back. But the problem is they have no more what? Time. So if people only realize that the one thing that they have in their hands that they can't get more back is time, I believe they'll change everything about them. And I think that the best way to live your life is by having a very balanced life. So when we talk about the 12 quests of life, we want to make sure that as we go through it, we're obviously mastering each and every one of the areas, such as relationships in your body and your spirit, making sure that you have a very healthy and spiritual life, that you're going through life with those areas balanced so you can finally get to the end of the road and realize that life was worth living. Most people are not living their lives. They're existing. That's the biggest challenge that I've seen today. So you look at, superstars and actors and, singers and all these guys, and all of a sudden you start hearing about people committing suicide. And you look back and you think, well, these people had apparently everything, but yet they had nothing, So I believe that's one of the main focuses here.
So how would you recommend that they start, in this journey to find themselves? How would you, the reality is they don't have time, they're busy. What should they do to start this journey?
Well, the beginning with every journey is to first become aware, right? There's three very basic elements. You have to know where you are in life, right? You have to really take an assessment of your current situation. And like I said, I divided it into 12 areas because it's easy. If you look at your body, for instance, where are you on a scale from 1 to 5? 5 being an absolutely amazing body, and 1 just being something that you look in the mirror and you can't stand it. Where are you with your wealth? Where are you at with your relationships? Where are you at with your family? And just going through the whole 12 quests. So the very first step that I believe they have to take is obviously become aware, because if you're not aware, like we were just talking about, there's no reason for them to change. They don't know there's something wrong. They don't know what they don't know. So from the moment they realize where they are, they have to be very clear on where they want to go. Once again, if somebody looks at their body and says, my body is a 2 right now, and I really wanted to be at a 4 or a 5, what are the steps that you have to do to eventually get there? Now, and that's the third part. But as far as getting clarity on where you want to go, what your destination is, it has to be extremely clear. I meet with people because obviously I'm in this field, and I'm always talking to people about their goals, especially when it comes to their finances. And they say, oh, I really wish I had that car. And I'm like, okay, what does that car look like? Do you know what color you like? Do you know how much that car costs? Have you ever test driven a car? Have you ever gotten inside one? Do you know what it smells like? Is that clear enough? And I've found throughout life that most people don't have the clarity of where they want to go. And that's the biggest challenge, because if they're not clear where they want to go, we go into the third phase now, and you're trying to understand what you have to do to get there. If you don't have the clarity, you're very unlikely to be able to reach that goal. Now, could you eventually reach it by luck? Of course. But the challenge is, and what I've personally experienced, is that when you finally hit the goal that you thought is what you were looking for, you're going to get there and you'll be like, okay, it's just not what I was looking for. And then again, you find another goal and you're just never clear enough. And therefore, it's never enough. That's the biggest challenge. It's never enough. One of the challenges that I have throughout my life is that I never celebrated. Every time I reached a different level or or something else in my life that I was looking for, I never took time to celebrate. So a practical way to answer your question is real simple, is becoming aware that there is a problem, understanding where you are, understanding where you want to go, and understanding exactly what you have to do to get there. I believe this would be the most practical way of getting to that solution.
You've spoken about God several times, and you mentioned God. I guess obviously it has played a very important role in your life. What would you say? What could we recommend the people that maybe are not so clear about their relationship with God? Can they still go through this quest, and can you still, like, learn from your story, from your transformation? Can they still have the life that they are here to enjoy?
Okay, so what I'm going to share with you is obviously my personal belief, and my entire story revolves around God. It was an encounter that I had, right? So whether this applies to everyone or not, this is my belief. I just want to make that very clear. But my entire transformation started that day when I finally got down on my knees and asked them to take my life. What I didn't tell you is that although we had, like I said, achieved some pretty cool things throughout our lives, I suffered from deep depression for 8 years. So the business that I built, we have a YouTube channel as well that has about 90,000 subscribers, 80,000 subscribers, was built during that time. And, I would turn on the camera and then shoot the video all happy and excited. And all of a sudden I'll turn off the camera and get down on my knees and start crying. That's how bad it was. So I used to put on a mask and just make things happen. And that was a really, really big challenge. So my whole encounter started when I finally submitted. That's why I dedicated the very first chapter of the book to talk about from submission to release. I grew up inside a church, so I grew up in a very legalistic environment where you literally couldn't do anything bad in the eyes of the church. Otherwise, if Jesus came tomorrow, you wouldn't go to heaven. If you did something bad, God would just strike you dead. He would punish you or do something like that. So my view of God growing up was very, very twisted. So when you're a kid, you have to submit to whatever authority, my father, my mother, and then obviously God. But as you grow up and you become an adult, you don't really want to have a relationship with a being that all that he really wants to do is punish you, right? So like I said, because I was growing up in that environment, by the time I was, in my 20s, I really didn't want anything to do with God. So my entire life, the mistakes that I've made have been really to just maybe try to prove something to someone and just say, listen, I'm doing a bunch of bad things and nothing's happening to me. But there was a lot of things happening to me. I just didn't realize it at the time. God wasn't causing them, but God ended up using those circumstances to change my life, night and day, from water to wine type of thing. So after I submitted, after I got down on my knees that day, the things that happened in my life, if I had planned it, and now remember, I'm a financial strategist. I plan everything about my life. If I had planned the next couple of years, it would not have worked out as well. Now, why do I believe it worked out? Because I submitted. From the moment I submitted, there was a guide that came over me and started guiding my life every step of the way. Now, did I understand what was going on most of the time? Of course not. But I believed in it, and I was just willing to follow. I was willing to be obedient. And I think this is one of the biggest things as well. So can people go through the 12 quests without this? I guess they could. Will they be successful at them? And by successful, I don't mean achieving things. I mean actually have that sense of fulfillment at the end of the day and be able to tell their kids, say, listen, my life is awesome. I am so happy. I'm so excited. Nothing lacks. If money is short, I'm still happy. I'm excited because I'm trusting. I know that God's gonna come through for me. Then wonderful. But I don't see how that could happen without God. So my relationship with God has grown quite a bit in the last few years. Not in the sense that, I'm just waiting. I'm just so scared of him. No, that's not what I mean. It's like a father-son relationship. I talk to him throughout the day. I ask him to help me with every decision that I make. And it's just amazing to see how things have changed, how well things actually go once you finally I guess, have that type of relationship and develop that type of a father-son relationship, which is just incredible. So I would invite everybody, if they've never experienced this before, to really maybe even get down on their knees and ask them not to take their life, but to give them purpose and just find out what happens from there on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Diogo, for going so much in depth into yourself, into your being. You've mentioned financial. You've mastered the financial part of your life through some hardship, but you have also been very successful. Why would you, or what would you attribute, let's say, the world of scarcity, or the world of that many people live in, of a scarcity? Why would you say this is happening in general in our society?
I believe. Well, could you just clear the question for me a bit?
Yeah. Why do you think that there's so many people living in a scarcity?
Okay, so I believe that when God intended, when He created us, He didn't intend for us to live in scarcity at all. I believe that we were created to live in abundance, right? And I've been researching this quite a bit in the last couple of months, and all I had to do is just really go back to the Bible, right? Growing up, I thought of the Bible as a book that was just so hard to read that I couldn't really understand, and I was just the authority over me, the people over me just said, you have to read it because you have to read it. So I didn't really want to read it. Now going back to it today, I see it as the book of wisdom. So every time I have a challenge about something, I'll just go back there and then try to find what to do about it. So when you go back to the original design and you understand how God created the earth and how He placed Adam and Eve and did all these things, you don't see scarcity anywhere, right? They didn't even really have to work very hard. They had to watch over things, and because obviously they had a job that God gave them, but they didn't have to suffer. Suffering didn't come until they sinned, until they ate the fruit, and obviously they were banned from paradise. So I started thinking about this, and I'm like, because a lot of people say, no, I'm just paying the price. I'm suffering for Christ. I'm suffering for God. And I always watched people say this. I always listened to people say this, and it never made sense to me. I started thinking, I said, why would an almighty being create us in His image and place us in this earth to suffer? That doesn't make any sense. Now I understand we're going to have challenges while in this world because the world is a corrupt place, right? I understand that, but that doesn't mean that you have to suffer in every single part of your life, and just live a miserable life. Once again, I believe we're created with purpose, and I believe that once we finally understand that we were created with purpose and we're uniquely made, we can step into that abundance. I believe that the reason most people live in scarcity, first of all, is lack of knowledge. Right? The Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." What I'm bringing to the table with the financial side of things is not because I'm so absolutely madly in love with all these things. No, I'm madly in love with the fact that each and every one of us have a purpose. But the challenge is that none of us have time to be able to pursue that purpose because we're selling our time for nothing. Most people work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. And by the time they get home, their mental energy is gone. So what do they want to do? They want to, you and I have been there. We've all been there at one point in our lives. We want to take a shower, get something to eat, sit in front of the TV for a few hours, go to sleep. Next day, guess what? Everything starts over again. And then the next day, everything starts over again. And they go on and on and on and on, never actually living, forever existing. And this is just such a big challenge. So my entire goal with the project and everything that I'm doing is to help people be able to buy back their time by setting up a very simple and effective financial strategy that would at least buy them 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so they can completely disconnect from everything that's taken up all their energy and just focus on seeking that one purpose. Why do I think this is so important, Angel? Because think about this. Most people dread Mondays. Why do they dread Mondays? Because they can't stand what they're doing for a living. Most people live that way. Why are they excited about Fridays? Because now they get to take 2 days away from the thing that they're dreading the most. I don't believe this is how we're intended to live. I believe that we were supposed to love Mondays and not really, I wouldn't say hate, but really don't care about Fridays. Why? Because when Friday comes, that means that you would be away from your true purpose for 2 days. True purpose being whatever it is that your gifts and talents are, and be able to flow in your element. That's what I say. That's what I call purpose, the element. So I think that if people would realize that if they found their true purpose and love Mondays and couldn't really care for Fridays, they would get out of that scarcity mentality and would change everything about their lives. They would go from victims to victors, and everything would change. How do I know that? Because I'm experiencing this right now for the first time. The things that I thought mattered don't really matter. They're still part of my life, but they don't really matter as much as I thought they did. So I'm not actively seeking them. If I'm not actively seeking those things, I have time to seek other things, which are the ones that really matter. Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. It was fascinating to hear you explaining with such a level of detail when you were saying, you know, I help people to get back like, or to have like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months of time, and to be able to disconnect from their lives and, you know, start, getting to know what the real purpose is, and I guess some financial, you know, objective or goals. Could you tell us with an example? You know, I mean, I'm excited. My Mindalia TV audience is going to be excited when they hear this. I mean, when they're hearing it now, how could we get like this entire like 1 month, let's say one quarter, let's say, I mean, 3 months of being like free of our job, let's say. How could we do that, Diogo?
So there are a couple of things that I teach people. Entrepreneurship, I believe, is extremely important. You and I can relate to this, obviously, because we understand the power that entrepreneurship has, right? So the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur, if you're an actual true entrepreneur, is that you have a business that runs whether or not you're there. Now, obviously, it takes a little bit of time for you to develop something like this, but the beauty is that once the business is up and running and you can step out of it and everything keeps functioning the same way, you understand that you have something valuable in your hand. Now, the second part of this is being able to put your money to work for you. Now, you can have a business up and running, but if something happens to the economy or, you know, your business fails or something like that, all of a sudden your income is gone. So I believe in multiple streams of income. You have to have a business. You have to obviously doing something that you love, and it's something that's good for people. I usually go through 5 filters. That's very, very easy. If people are taking notes, that'll be very helpful for them. I believe that it has to be moral, legal, and ethical, and it has to be good for you and the people around you. If you go through those 5 filters and it's something you truly love doing, then absolutely go build a business with it. Find a way to monetize it, obviously, so you can live out your life that way. But like I said, the second thing is once that business is up and running and you're really doing well, then you want to get that extra money that you're making and you want to invest that money so that money eventually can start working for you. When we talk about retirement, and talk a lot with my clients about retirement and financial freedom, to most people, when I ask them, you know, what age would you like to retire in? They usually tell me about 65 or 67. And when I ask them why, they usually tell me that, you know, they want to retire by 65 or 67 because they don't want to have to work anymore after that. And so I realized that most people have no idea what the word retirement means. The word retirement is nothing but, it means nothing but you have enough passive income coming in to meet and exceed your expenses. In other words, if your expenses are $4,000 a month and you have enough money invested that generates $4,000 a month and you're 33 years old like I am, you're retired. If you're 25 years old and your expenses are $2,000 and you have enough income coming in passively without you having to work to pay for your expenses, you're retired. So to answer your question, I believe that if people have a plan to eventually have money working for them or have a business that generates income passively without them having to actively work, that will buy them back 1, 3, 6, or 12 months. Now, a lot of people may say, listen, I'm not the entrepreneurial type and I can't really make that happen. That's great. Whatever you're doing now, you have to have a simple and effective strategy to set aside enough money to eventually be able to invest it and eventually have enough passive income coming in to meet and exceed your expenses. That's how I did it for 2 years. I invested money. Remember, planning since I was 13 years old, actively in the market for the last 8 or 9 years. And then we had some really big financial wins. Just to give you an idea, and I don't say any of this to impress you because I'm a numbers guy, so obviously I like to make sense of everything that I'm saying. 2012 was my worst year yet. And I'm going to tell you this because a lot of people that are watching us have a very limited mindset, not because they want to have that mindset, limited mindset, but because they're products of their environment. So the environment they grew up in, their school, maybe their teacher spoke words over them that just made them have some type of mental block. But 2012, I had my worst financial year yet ever since I got back in the US. I made $30,000. I had just made a transition when it comes to like work and job and things like that. And that was my worst year yet. Well, 2012 is when I really started being introduced to self-development and becoming aware of where you are and setting up goals and things like that. In 2 years, I gave myself a $470,000 pay raise. I went from $30,000 in 2012 to $500,000 in personal income in 2014. Again, I don't say any of this to impress you because a lot of people watching us have done way more than that. And it wasn't about the $500,000. It was about the growth that happened. because it was a tremendous growth. Now, imagine if I had a job throughout that whole time. Do you believe my boss would have given me a $470,000 pay raise? Of course not. But what had to happen? What happened at that point? I stepped out of my comfort zone. I went from working as an employee to owning my own business. And yes, it took a lot of guts. Yes, I made some major mistakes. But at the end of the day, it pays off. Is it always that way? No. Was it my first successful experience? Of course not. I had a lot of failures. I'm sorry, it was my first successful experience, but I had a lot of failures before that. But I was at least able, I was at least willing to step out of the comfort zone and eventually be able to have that money working for me. So on the practical side is get together with someone, if you have somebody that you know, fantastic, and have them help you structure a financial plan that will eventually help you get to where you want to be. But you have to be very clear. What is it going to take for me to buy back 3 months of my time or 6 months of my time or 12 months of my time? And then just follow through with the program. It's not rocket science, but you have to get with somebody that knows what they're doing. And if you can find somebody that actually has been there before and has achieved that financial freedom, even if it is for just for the time they were looking for, then wonderful, follow their plan.
Okay, so if I understand it well, that means that the goal should be, how fast can I get, or as soon as we get to that point in which our residual income, is covering our expenses, then we are ready to start having this additional time, and we can do those other things, and we can focus ourselves on finding our unique purpose here. Did I understand it well?
Absolutely. And I believe you can do this throughout the process. It's not like you can only do it if you're able to not be able to work in like I've done. But I just think it's kind of like an intensive. If you've ever been through a program like Tony Robbins, for example, why is it so special when you're in an environment like that? Because you're literally there from 9 o'clock in the morning until midnight every single day. So you're immersed in that process. Now, do I believe that people can go through the same process while they're working? Of course. But I'm just saying that most people are spending all of their energy, their mental power at the wrong places. So if somebody just cannot handle it and they can't, set aside any extra time to be able to pursue those goals and really find what their purpose is, then I would say focus really hard and work very hard to work for, 1, 2, or 3 years, and then put enough money together to buy back some time for yourself and just really unplug. Go to a place where nobody's going to be able to get in touch with you, or whatever you have to do. My only thing here is find a way to buy back your time, whatever that is. Maybe it's an hour a day or 2 hours a day. Because you could have, Angel, this is the one thing as well that I often talk to people about. You could have the best plan ever to reach your goals. But if you don't have the right vehicle to reach them, it's kind of like as if you were going to Japan and you wanted to drive your car all the way to Japan. I don't even know if that would be possible. If you took a ship or whatever, it probably would be possible. But how long would it take for you to get there? Now, if you hopped on an airplane, you could be there in a relatively short period of time. So if you have a very good structured plan, but you don't have a very effective vehicle to get there, it makes it very hard. So if you have a job that you're making, $10 an hour, $15 an hour, whatever it is, but you're, spending all the money you make at the end of the month, when are you going to be able to buy back your time? Never. Now, if you make $100 an hour and you blow the $100 an hour, it's still not going to do you any good. It's not about how much money you make at the end of the day. It's how much money you keep. And more importantly, how much money you put to work so it could eventually generate passive income for you. So could it happen throughout the journey? Of course it could. But I'm just taking it to an extreme because most people really they can't do this on a daily basis. They have to buy back some of their time and just really take some time off and be able to focus on that one thing only.
Okay, so what should be the starting point? Let's say, okay, so, we understand, we buy it. We really understand what you're saying, but what's the next step? What should be like the next step that you would recommend Mindalia TV's audience tonight?
I believe the very first step is understanding what you want. I often ask people this: if God came down from heaven today and gave you a white canvas and said, draw out your life exactly the way you want it, any way you want it, just draw me a little pictures, put words, whatever it is, get all the 12 areas that I talk about, and then put the ideal life in each one of them. Could you do this? What I've found is that most people can't even do that. And now we keep, like I said, most of us, most people, and I was one of them for years, they're going through life deaf, dumb, and blind. So how could they reach a goal and have the clarity that they need if they don't even know what they want? Most people that I work with on a daily basis or I talk to, they don't know. So I'm thinking they're like complaining and they're so frustrated that they can't reach the goal. But when I ask them a simple question, such as, what do you want? What are you trying to achieve? They don't even know. That's the very first step. Just have the clarity of what you want in life. The second step, very practical, is put together the financial plan that's going to allow you to get to that goal. So there's something that it's called a financial independence number, and it's something really easy to calculate. So this will be very helpful to the audience. If you need $5,000 worth of income coming in every month passively to pay, meet and exceed your expenses, how much money would you need invested to generate $5,000 every month? This is a very practical example. So you have clarity where you're going, what you want, and how much money do you need to support you with that life. So if we're talking about $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. Let's just say they're getting 10% rate of return, which is not hard to get at all, right? Depending on the type of investment that you're getting. Well, you need $600,000 invested at 10%. Obviously, I'm not calculating taxes, so you have to throw taxes in there. But just to be practical, $600,000 at 10% will generate $60,000 that will give you $5,000 a month. It's not such a large number. $600,000 is still a lot of money, but people are thinking that they can't be free unless they make millions of dollars, and it doesn't work that way. Keep your expenses low, put your money to work for you, and then be able to live life the way you want to live, and then buy back your time to pursue the things that you really love and care.
Excellent. I love the starting point. Okay, so we've been talking about the journey of the Kingsmen a few times during the interview. Could you tell us what does the Kingsmen have to see with your life and with the way that you serve people today?
Yeah, so it was interesting because the way that word came to me, Kingsman, was that one day last year, obviously you know this, I moved to Texas for a few months. We took a sabbatical time, which wasn't necessarily let's go to Texas for a sabbatical and come back to Orlando. We actually moved to Texas to stay, but it's just amazing. It's one of those things that I was mentioning earlier that we think that we have control over our lives and we really don't. So all of a sudden I found myself back in Orlando in June or July of last year. And I went for a walk because throughout this process, I've been seeking God so much to really find out my purpose in life. And I just went for on a 3-hour walk at midnight, close to midnight. And I was just so frustrated. And I was just like, as I was walking, I was talking to God out loud, and I sounded like a crazy person, just saying, listen, I mean, I submitted. I need some clarity. I still don't have the clarity that I need. Should I go back to real estate and build the business back up? Should I, go back to financial services? Should I go back? What should I do with my life? Because at this point, I don't even care about the money or the success or anything like that anymore. I know that's gonna come with time, but I want to be fulfilled at the end of the day. So as I was taking the walk, on my way back home, this word Kingsman came to my mind, and I thought, well, why did that come to my mind? And then it reminded me of the movie Kingsman, right? And I got back home, so I started doing some research in the internet, and I went and watched the movie again, and I'm like, that is so cool, Being a Kingsman is, and I don't say just a Kingsman because you're a spy or anything like that, but it's somebody that lives with a higher purpose, right? They're everything about them is different, And when I talk about my relationship with my creator, for instance, what does a Kingsman mean? A Kingsman, in my opinion, is humanity at the king's service, right? If you look at or if you Google the word Kingsman, it's the lowest ranking official in the British Army, in the King's Army. So it's not because it's the lowest, and that's why I picked the word. It just came at such a crucial point to me, and then everything was built around it. So Kingsman is someone that lives for more than himself or herself, themselves. Kingsman is someone that believes that they're created uniquely for a specific purpose, that they understand that they were not placed in this earth to exist, but they were placed on this earth to live. They also understand that because they were made for a purpose, that in order for them to find their purpose, they have to understand who they are. They have to understand what their gifts and talents are. They have to understand what they love in life. What would they do if nobody paid them any money? What is their temperament like? What is their personality like? So they really have to get to know themselves. But for you to get to know yourself, you have to know the one who made you. So if you're trying to find your purpose without understanding yourself, it's nearly impossible. And if you don't understand yourself, it's because you don't know the one who created you. And how could you ever get there? So Kingsman is this person that just has this sense of awareness that the way they've been living their lives is not the right way. There's a reason why they're so frustrated. There's a reason why they're just kind of going through life, and they're having a bad relationship with their spouse, and they can't stand their kids, and they're fighting with people at work, and they go to the grocery store and they get mad at the cashier, and they never seem to make enough money. A Kingsman is someone that understands that life is not theirs, that there's a life out there just waiting for them, but they have to understand what do they even want. That's what a Kingsman is like, and that's why we ended up building the whole project around that. It's like, what would Monday be like if you actually wanted to live and not exist? Well, what would it be like if you wanted to jump out of bed every morning, wanted to say, listen, I'm excited about going to work, I'm excited about being my life? So that's what a Kingsman means. That's what a Kingsman is all about.
Excellent. And what's the main, let's say, what's the main purpose that you think people are accomplishing now that your book is on the streets, the book can be bought, it's easy to find? What do you think that people are getting out of your book today, Diogo?
So the feedback that I've got so far has been really amazing. I actually was talking to a waitress that we're part of a club in Orlando, a business club called the Citrus Club. And I go there every Monday with, some of my friends at 7 o'clock in the morning. So we get to hang out and talk about life and things like that. And one of the waitresses that got one of the books, she texted me the other day and she said, I couldn't stop crying reading your books. I'm on the 3rd chapter now and I can't stop weeping. And I asked her why later, and she said, I was connecting with you. The things that you're describing in the book are the things that I'm currently going through. And I thought that I was the only one going through them. So the reason I wrote the book in the way that I did, and I was extremely vulnerable, extremely open about my stories. And I was even criticized by a lot of people because they said, you didn't have to be that honest. I'm like, what do you mean I didn't have to be that honest? I said, that's the problem with society today. People are not willing to be vulnerable. But I understand why they're not willing, because people have hurt them so much throughout this process that they're just like, I'm afraid to be judged. That's how I grew up. So I found unconditional love from strangers when I first moved to Texas and I had my first mentor. So the feedback that we've been getting so far has been amazing. And I understand now why is it that I needed to write a book in this way. Most of the book was written when I was on my knees, weeping like crazy. And because I was experiencing these things all over again, and I literally felt like I was taking a beating. I would be like, I can barely get up because my body aches so much. That's how powerful it is. But why? Because I had to revisit those places. So I think that it's very impactful to people because it's connecting with the struggles that they're currently going through. And they're thinking in their minds that they're the only ones going through that. So all of a sudden they read somebody that people thought on the outside was very successful and had it all together. All of a sudden they realized that I was more broken than they were. And I used to tell people this because some people would look at me or talk to me and say, man, I wish I had your life. And in my mind, I was thinking, you have no idea what you're asking me. Please don't ask that. Because if you were to spend a day in my life, in my real life, you would never want to go back to that place. I guarantee you. Now, I'm not putting myself in a victim mentality. That's not what I mean. But I'm just saying, and I know that each and every one of us go through hardships in life, and every story is different. But I'm just saying, I'm the only one that knows what I've experienced. So please do not wish that you had my life. So that's I believe this is the biggest gain that people have, is just the connectivity because of the vulnerability that I've been able to, to share with the stories with them and everything else. It's just given them such a great way to connect throughout the book and understand that they're not alone.
Excellent. I would like you to please make sure that our audience is able to find you. So where can we find you? Where can we find your work? Where can you find your book, please?
So there are a couple of places. If you want to find the book, you can go directly on Amazon and just type in The Journey of a Kingsman, or just type in my name, Diogo Esteves. And there are a couple of different options. You can either have it on ebook, so through Kindle. We also have the audio version, and you have the paperback as well. The other way is you could go to the Kingsman website. So it's thekingsmanacademy.com, and you can order the book through there as well. So those are the two main options. There's a very specific description on everything that we do and how we can help people as well. And I'd love to connect with the audience if they have any questions. Even after the interview, I'll be happy to get in touch with them and maybe set up a one-on-one time to talk to them.
Excellent. So in those places, they can reach out to you easily? Awesome. Great. So we, taking your word, we're going to go to the questions right now. So let me go back to the document. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to start with the first question, Diogo. So you say you are thankful for the struggle you went through? Was that a tool used by God to show you your path and purpose?
Yes, absolutely yes. And you know what the challenging thing is? As you're going through the problem or the storm or whatever you want to call it, you don't realize it. Even if you've submitted your life and you're trusting God and you understand that He's with you, our minds are very limited, right? So we try to keep putting God in a little box. So as you're going through the storm, you don't realize that He is there with you and everything will be okay. Now, there obviously, everything in life, there are consequences to every action. So whatever it is that you did, you're going to see the reactions and everything else as well. But I don't believe that God caused any of that in my life like I used to believe growing up. But I believe that He used that to, and this is very key. This will change everything about your perspective. If you understand that the situations that happen in your life happen for a reason and could not have happened any other way, your perspective will be changed in a way that you never thought possible. He will use those circumstances in your life to shape your character, to help you build your character, to develop it so He can finally take you to the next level. Why? Because if He were to take you to the next level in life without your character being developed like the way He wanted to develop it, you wouldn't be able to support it. So it's just amazing. It gives me goosebumps every time I talk about that, because we're talking about your destiny in life. Think about when you first start going to the gym. If you want to build muscles, you don't start lifting 100 pounds. You start lifting 20 pounds, and then your muscles grow a little bit. And then all of a sudden you pick up 40 pounds, and then your muscles grow a little bit more. All of a sudden you're lifting 400 pounds, but you wouldn't have got to the 400 if you hadn't gone through the 20. And I was actually talking to my 10-year-old son about that yesterday. He was saying, Dad, at school, I'm having some storms, I'm having some challenges, and I keep wondering, why is it that it gets tougher as I go from 4th to 5th and 6th grade? I said, well, son, there's a reason. And I gave him the example that I just gave you at the gym. And all of a sudden, he clicked. And he's all like, that makes sense. Because if all he had were the 20 pound weight all his life, then he would never be able to be ready for the next step in life. So I've always asked God to take me to where remember that my submission was asking Him to show me my purpose. Well, my purpose is my destiny, right? So I need Him to show me exactly where He wants me. And for me to be there, I really have to be stronger than I am right now. So I absolutely agree that He uses your circumstances to get you to that level. No doubt about it.
Beautiful. Let's go for the next question. What would you recommend to parents? What approach of God should we give to our kids?
What an approach. I believe that the best approach that you could teach your kids about, that you could have with your kids, is teach them that God is a loving Father, and not teach them that God's going to punish them if they don't do something, and use fear and guilt and condemnation, because that's how I grew up. Not because my parents were doing this to me all the time. That's not what I mean. But the environment that I was in, especially when it came to church, it was often spoken over me that you have to do this, otherwise you'll be punished. So every time you use guilt and condemnation, you end up building a relationship with your kid, or your kid ends up building a relationship with God that's not very healthy. And just remember, guilt and condemnation is what nearly cost my life. So if I can give you any advice, is teach your kids how to have a relationship with God and develop a relationship with them. Become a mentor. I know it's very, very tough, and oftentimes we have to catch ourselves. And I talk to my wife about this all the time. Is we all get angry, we all get anxious, these are natural human emotions, right? But you have to go back to the Bible and look at the fruits of the Spirit. Once you finally submitted, and you're looking, in the fruits of the Spirit are, patience and self-control and love and care, then that's how you should be living, even if you don't feel that way. So you have to be aware, going back to what we were talking about earlier, being aware that that's who you truly are, and that's how you have to live your life. It's not always easy, or you can always do it, but just like the gym exercise, it's a process that you go through. So those are the key elements, just building relationships, because I believe this is why we were created to begin with.
Excellent. Let's go to the next question. Do you think gratitude makes us more abundant?
Oh, no doubt about it. It's gratitude changes everything in life. Imagine getting up every day and the very first thing that you say is you just thank God for being able to even wake up. Now, if you start looking at the little things, I'm not even talking about you living where you want and having the perfect job or the business or driving a beautiful car. I'm talking about the little things. If you get off your bed, you're standing on your feet. You have your legs, you have your feet. You're healthy, you're able to get up. You just slept on a bed when people around the world are sleeping on the floor, on the dirt floor. You're living in a house when most people don't even have a house to live in. Then you go to your bathroom, you turn on the water, you have clean water you can brush your teeth with. You go to the kitchen, you have clean water you can drink. You open the fridge, you have food. So I think when we start looking at these little things, look at yourself in the mirror. You got eyes that you can see yourself. You have a tongue and you have voice that you can talk to people, you can praise God with. You have lips that can move. You have all your teeth, you can hear. The little things, gratitude changes everything, but you have to go back to the basics. Never forget where you came from. For a long time, I forgot where I came from. I became what I had. And that was one of the biggest challenges that I had throughout life. So being thankful for the little things, for your family, for your health, for the air you're breathing, might seem a little silly, but if you get in that mindset of doing this on a daily basis, right when you wake up and start with praise and thanksgiving, I think it'll change everything. It'll change your day, it'll change your week, it'll change your month, it'll change your life forever.
Excellent. Let's go to the next question. Why do you think we are so disconnected to our purpose?
Because I don't think we've ever been taught about our purpose. I often give an example of a blender. So think about a blender for a second. It's a very powerful tool, right? You connect it to power, and then you push a button, and whatever you put in there is gonna be gone. It's just gonna become liquid, right? Now imagine the blender was created to blend things. But however, you can use a blender to just put some juice in there and pour juice on a cup without blending anything. It could be used as a jar. You could also put stuff in the blender to use it as a container and just put it in the pantry. Now, I keep imagining that if a blender had feelings, what would a blender be like if it was doing anything but blending? For the most part, what I've seen people do with their kids, and obviously my parents, because they didn't know any better, they didn't talk about purpose with us as much, because I believe their parents probably didn't do the same. And I know they did awesome with our lives, and they did phenomenally well with as much as they could. But with my kids, it's different. I'm always talking to them about purpose. Why? Because if you don't talk to them about a specific subject, they're not aware of it. So how could you talk to somebody about purpose that's never been introduced to purpose before, and they don't even know they were created by someone higher than themselves? How they have to be aware of it first. So I believe the biggest disconnect comes from the fact that people perish for lack of knowledge. They don't even know what they don't know. Purpose is the main goal of life. Fulfilling your purpose is the main goal. But if you never talk to them about it, then how could they ever know? There's no pursuing something that you've never heard about.
How do I find my purpose is the next question, Diogo.
So that's the $1 million question, right? So for months, I listened to all kinds of videos. I've watched all types of videos. I've listened to all types of sermons of pastors, spending an hour and a half talking about purpose. And I struggled like crazy to find my purpose, until I watched that one video from Daniel Kalinda about purpose that was 3 minutes long. And he said, listen, we make life more complicated than it has to be. Finding your purpose is not that hard. And he said some very practical things in that video that helped me put a filter together. Like I said, if something is moral, legal, and ethical, it's good for you and it's good for the people around you, and you love doing. In other words, if I were to pay you $1 million to do something else, and to do something you didn't like, and you could do something that you love doing every day and have your expenses paid for, which one would you choose? Now, if you're very money oriented, which I was, not anymore, but I was very money oriented, I would probably gravitate towards $1 million. Today, there's no amount of money that you can pay me, I can tell you that much, to get me to switch and do something else. And I've had people make me offers that didn't make any sense in my mind and offer me different types of opportunities and businesses and stuff like that. But I'm thinking, if I step out and I grab those opportunities, I'm going to be living a lie. And I've lived a lie before, so I don't want to go back there. So being practical here, find your purpose. I believe the very first thing that you need to do is have that connection with the one that created you. Once you have that connection, now it's a process. You're going to develop a connection, because if you've never had it before, you don't know what it's like. You have to develop that relationship. The second thing, like I mentioned before, is understanding yourself. Have you ever taken a profile, an assessment profile, a personality profile assessment? Do you understand what your personality is like? Are you an analytical person? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Are you a patient? Are you a dominant? You have to understand yourself. Find out what your temperament is like. Find out what turns you on. Find out what turns you off, what motivates you, what drives you, what excites you, and what turns you off as well. And then from that moment, you're going to start narrowing things down. Once you're done with that, then understand, what is it that I really like? What are my gifts and my talents? I started thinking about my gifts and talents, and I thought, well, I started working when I was 13 years old. By the time I was 16, I believe I had 10,000 bucks saved. Okay, that tells you something, because I didn't know a lot of 16-year-olds that had 10 grand saved. So there's a clue right there. So there are clues throughout your life on things that you've done very, very well that come very naturally to you. So Daniel Kolenda said this on this video, and this is very key. If you look at other people and you do something so well that you believe everybody else should be doing it as well, it should come as natural, but it doesn't, that's your purpose. So to me, everybody should have should be able to deal with money easily. They should be good with numbers. But what I found is that most people aren't. So all of a sudden, again, I narrowed down a little bit more what I believe my purpose is. So as of right now, the path that I'm on is I believe I need to teach people and help them with their numbers, because most people, let's be honest, they're not good. So will this change over time or morph into something more specific? I believe so. But right now, I believe that I'm living out my purpose. So I hope that helps.
Excellent. Let's go to the next question. Do you think that separating from church as an institution helped you strengthen your own personal relationship with God?
I don't believe separating from church, because, well, let's just make a very strong, important point here. What I thought church was, what I thought God was, what I thought relationship with him was completely twisted. Remember that. So when you talk about that environment that I grew up in and that belief system, absolutely, I had to disconnect from that. But what I realized is that pastors are not bad, churches are not bad. The challenge is, just like everything else in life, God has certain representatives. They're not really representatives, but people that say they represent God, they're not really doing the best job that they should. You know, maybe they're treating you in a way that God, that's not what it says in the Bible. You know, they're being very condemning and want you to feel guilty about something. I don't believe that's the way to go. So just to understand that I had such a bitter taste in my mouth because of the way I grew up, that the last thing that I want was to connect with a pastor, right? Because I had very bad experiences before. I didn't want anything to do with church because I didn't want anything to do with God. But here's the interesting thing. God had to take me and my family all the way to Texas, where I didn't know anybody and I didn't know anything. I didn't have any business in, brought me into a home of a pastor that I had never met before. And that's where I experienced unconditional love from a stranger for the first time. And that was the beginning of my freedom. Let's just put it that way. So separating from church, it just really depends on what type of environment you're in. If you're in an environment that's very legalistic and condemning and just full of guilt, then I believe absolutely. But you should be connected to a body, because imagine this, we're all parts of the body. If you're called to be the hand and you're a hand by yourself, you can't do much. You're supposed to be connected to a body. And I believe that's what the church is all about. The true church is the body of Christ, and it's made out of all types of different parts. And you are one of those parts. So just keep that in mind as you go and try to find a healthy church, something that, people are not judging you for what you've done or what you currently do, where an environment where people are willing to love you and care for you for who you really are. And they're willing to develop you and help you find your true purpose in life.
Wow, extraordinary. I really love that part. I think that last really got me here. Sorry to make a personal comment, but I think it's going to get to the heart of a lot of people. Diogo, thank you. Thank you for opening yourself so much. Let's continue with the questions. How about people that are very successful professionally and financially, but are empty and sad with the lives that they are living, how to detach from that financial security without fear.
That was me. Absolutely read the book because that's what my story is all about. Again, it's not, a lot of people watching this interview are not going to think that anything that I accomplished was a major deal because they've done much greater things. To me and where I came from, that was a pretty big deal because nobody in my family or the people that surrounded me had accomplished what I accomplished. But yet, remember, when I reached what I thought the peak of the mountain was, which is probably where you're at now, I looked across the way and I realized that I had just spent my entire life climbing the wrong mountain. Now I had to come all the way down and start climbing that again, and it wasn't an easy journey. So what I would do if I were you, becoming detached of things, of financial things, is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Hardest thing you'll ever do. But I'll tell you as well that it's the most freeing thing you'll ever do. Once you finally realize and you finally submit to God, and I'm saying fully submit, not to a pastor, not to a church or anything like that. I'm saying you and God. Pastor and the churches are going to be there to support you, but it has to be a vertical relationship between the two of you. Once you finally submit and you say, I am here to do as you please, and I'm here to do your will, I do not want, because that was my conversation with God, I don't care what I want anymore. I want what you want for me, period, right? But here's the funny thing. All of a sudden, if I'm submitted to his will, what I want from now on, as long as I go through that filter, moral, legal, ethical, good for me and good for people, it's what he wants because I'm fully submitted and he's giving me a blueprint so I can understand exactly what my life should be like. So I'm always asking for guidance. And the biggest thing that's helped me throughout this process, especially when it comes to finances, because remember, I didn't work for 2 years. So yes, our finances did go down. I didn't have all passive income coming in, to cover all of my expenses, but I had a big part of that. But I had assets and things like that I could use, emergency fund and things like that. So I was able to survive throughout this whole process without ever decreasing my lifestyle. And we spend on average about $10,000 to $12,000 a month. And we have spent that per month every year. Again, I'm very open about my numbers because I want to be real with people here. Now, that obviously there was a lot of trust, that's the word. Because I believe if you look at the Israelites, if you look at the Bible of the story of the Israelites, the reason they left Egypt and only a couple of them ever reached the promised land and they kept going around the desert was because of their unbelief and their disobedience. So when I finally realized that, I said, okay, so I left Egypt, but I'm currently in the desert. For me to reach the promised land, I have to be obedient and I have to believe. Well, that's all I've been doing in this last few years. Sometimes I'll get up in the morning. I'm not going to say that my life was just beautiful all the time. It's not. Even today, I have my challenges. Everybody does. But I can get up in the morning and say, listen, God, I know that you've got my best interest in mind. So I'm going to trust you with everything that I have. If you're in that position, which is a position that I was in, I would put that financial plan in place and start creating that connection with God, developing that relationship, and getting to know yourself well. And there's a very practical way, like I said, do an assessment, a personality profile assessment, and just start understanding who you are and how you're built. Because that way you'll know how to handle the situations ahead. And then focus on buying back your time. Sell off some assets, invest it so you can create passive income, and they take some time off if you're able to do that as well. It's not easy, but it's doable and it's absolutely worth it.
Excellent. Another question. Are schools getting our kids closer or far away from their purpose?
To be honest, I think they're getting them further away from the purpose. And the reason I say this is because, first of all, they're not even bringing any of these things up. They're not even talking about purpose. Most kids that I talk to today, they're growing up in their parents' shadow. So they're, I ask them, I say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I want to be a doctor. Well, you must love, helping people and maybe, are you okay with seeing blood and things like that? They're like, no, I can't stand blood. And I'm like, how are you going to be a doctor if you can't even stand blood? Well, do you really love that? Not really. Well, why are you pursuing that? Well, because that's what my parents always told me that I should do because I could have a really good life or I could get paid very well. Or they're becoming attorneys because, again, maybe their father or mother was an attorney. So the schools are not motivating kids to go out and seek their purpose. They're just teaching them exactly what they've been teaching them for the last 150 years. If you look on YouTube, Prince EA has a video that talks about the school system, and everything in the last 100 years has evolved. The school system hasn't. Now, obviously, they're trying to do their best, for the most part. But think about this. The wealthy don't necessarily want your kids to understand how to become wealthy. Why? Because somebody has to work. So in my mind, the only thing that I could think of is, would it be in their best interest to teach kids how to fulfill their purpose and then go out there and become entrepreneurs and investors and create their own purpose, when the wealthy or the little percentage of society that controls everything has in their best interest to have these workers working for them for the rest of their lives? So you start questioning a lot of things about life and about, the school system and everything else as well, because they're not emphasizing, I believe, the right things. I think entrepreneurship is a way of freedom. I believe investing in creating passive incomes is a way of freedom. And it's funny because money is the one thing that we use every single day and we never took a course on. Now, you know about history, you know about science, you know about math, you know about all these things, but the one thing that you're going to use every day for the rest of your life, you never had a class on. And if you did have a class, it's a very basic and limited class that's never going to get you to that ultimate financial freedom. So do I believe that? Absolutely. I think it's just coming farther and further away from home, from their purpose.
Excellent. And now we go for the last question. What would you say to those who think and or believe the kingdom of heaven belongs to the poor? Wow.
The kingdom of heaven belongs to the poor. I don't think I'm going to be able to get in so much depth with that. I'm not a theologian, so it's a little hard for me to explain it. But I don't think that poor meant literally poor as far as finances, and that's what a lot of people relate to, right? So I've seen a lot of pastors preach about, money is the root of all evil. What they leave out is that love for money is the root of all evil. The same way that, and this is really gonna, this might really get a lot of people, because I dedicated 2 chapters in the book to this, because I think it's so crucial. When I talk about debt, people are like, "Ooh, I don't like that. I want to get rid of my debt. I want to pay it off as quickly as possible. I want to have my debt freedom and say I'm debt free." Do you know what? I never want to be out of debt. Now, that's a very powerful statement, right? I work with numbers, never want to be out of debt. I never want to have my car paid off. I never want to have my home paid off. Now, think about this for a second. Let it sink in. Because everything we've been taught about money, for the most part, has been stay away from debt, because debt is bad. Now, there's silly debt, there's really bad debt, and there's good debt. It's kind of like telling somebody that is overweight, you cannot eat cake for the rest of your life, and they love eating cake. You have to teach them the type of cake to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat it. You have to educate them on how to eat the cake so they don't gain the weight back. That's one of the challenges as well, right? When you go back to the Bible, a lot of people are preaching about this, and they're saying, this is my understanding and how I've applied it to my life, and it's worked very well. The person, the borrower, is a slave to the lender, right? Think about this. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Yes, but if I buy a rental home and I finance that home and I put 20% down and I finance 80%, and I put a tenant in that home, and every month that tenant pays me rent, which pays for the debt and leaves money in my pocket, who is the slave? Me, who borrowed the money, or the tenant who's paying my debt? Let that sink in as well for a second, because all of a sudden you created debt, but it's smart debt. So why did I go into that concept? Because there's a paradigm shift that needs to happen with everything you've been taught up until this point. Jesus became poor so we could be rich. So Jesus suffered. He paid for everything so we could be rich. I'm not just talking about money. I'm not just talking about finances. I'm having about living a rich life. Again, why would a being so superior, like God, create us in his image and want us to be poor in every area? That never made sense to me. So again, I go back to the fact that you were uniquely created for a purpose, and he wants to give you a beautiful, blessed life. And you are going to have certain things that you're going to have to go through in life, but those I don't believe are one of them. I don't believe that you have to be poor in order for you to reach. I don't believe this is what they meant, becoming poor and suffering in life so you could eventually reach the kingdom of heaven. I know poor people who are mean and bad, and I know rich people who are mean and bad. I also know poor people that are great, and I know rich people that are great as well, and they're very, very good. So they help others. They're always sowing into their lives. They're always speaking blessings over them. They're helping their churches. They're helping their charities, and they're stinking rich. How do you explain that? That's a mystery, but that's $1 million question that I think you have to have a little connection with God and ask him for his, for your own, the understanding that he wants you to, how he wants you to see this.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure to be talking with you and to learn from your wisdom. I would like to finish the conversation with you today. Number one, I would like to actually, if you could spell the name of that person of the video that helped you so much to find your life purpose. I would love you to do that, and also to remind our audience again of where we can find you, please.
Absolutely. So the name of the video that I saw was, his name is Daniel, D-A-N-I-E-L. His last name is Kolenda, K-O-L-E-N-D-A. He's actually here in Orlando as well. I just found out a few months ago. And if you type in, I believe if you type in Daniel Kolenda and then purpose, I believe that video pulls up. And if I'm not wrong, it's a 3-minute video. And it's very practical and to the point. Now, Daniel Kolenda is someone that speaks to millions. He's an evangelist. And he speaks to millions of people in Africa, like 2-3 million people at a time. So his words, his preaching is very powerful as well. And then as far as the website, you can go to the Kingsman Academy.com, or you can obviously go on Amazon and just type in The Journey of a Kingsman, or just type my Diogo Esteves, E-S-T-E-V-E-S, and you'll be able to pull up the book and all the resources that we have available for you as well.
Wonderful. Wow. It's been a powerful conversation with you today, Diogo. It's been a real pleasure. Again, in the name of Mindalia TV's audience, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And again, this is Angel Ribo with Mindalia TV, and thank you very much for being with us today, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.